Good morning. I'd like to begin by addressing the title of this talk directly, The Stocks That Never Loses. Now, some of you might be sitting there thinking I've promised a magic trick, a financial fairy tale. You'd be right to be skeptical. If we're talking about a stock's quoted price on a screen, there is no such thing as one that never goes down. The market is a voting machine in the short term, subject to whims, fears, and frenzies. Any stock can, and likely will, see its price cut in half at some point. To seek a stock immune to that is to chase a mirage. So, if we're not talking about price, what are we talking about? We must shift our entire frame of reference. The true stock that never loses isn't defined by the ticker symbol's daily dance. It's defined by the relentless, underlying growth of the business itself, its intrinsic value. You see, price is what you pay, but value is what you own. A temporary decline in the former is meaningless noise if the latter is marching steadily upward year after year. Think of it like this: if you were to buy a wonderful apartment building in a growing city, would you consider yourself a loser because some appraiser gave you a lowball estimate one Tuesday in a panic? Of course not. You'd look at the rising rents, the full occupancy, the solidity of the bricks and mortar. You'd judge your investment by the cash flowing through the door, not the opinion of a nervous stranger. Owning a stock is no different. It is owning a piece of a business. The question isn't, did the quote go up today? The question is this business worth more today than it was yesterday? This is the critical foundation. When you find a business whose economic engine is so powerful, whose position is so fortified, that its earning power compounds predictably over the very long term, you have found the closest thing to our title. In fact, for such a business, a sharp decline in its stock price is not a loss at all. It is a gift. It is the market, in its infinite short-sightedness, offering you the chance to buy more of a compounding machine at a discount. The real permanent loss of capital, occurs only if the business itself deteriorates, or if you, the owner, get frightened by the meaningless noise of price and sell your interest during one of those temporary markdowns. So, from this moment forward, I want you to erase the notion of a stock as a blinking number. See it for what it truly is: a fractional ownership in a living, breathing enterprise. Your goal is not to outsmart the mood swings of the market. Your goal is to identify, and then have the fortitude to hold, those rare enterprises whose value is almost certain to be substantially higher 10, 20, 30 years from now. If you can do that, you will discover that the path to never losing is not about avoiding declines, but about embracing a simple truth: time is the friend of the wonderful business and the enemy of the mediocre. Now, if we accept that our goal is to own pieces of businesses whose value compounds over decades, the next question is the most important one we can ask: what protects that compounding process? What stops a competitor from coming along and taking it all away? Because in capitalism, any high-return business is a magnet for challenge. Without a defense, today's profits are simply an invitation for tomorrow's competition. That protection, that defense, is what we can call an economic moat. Just like the castles of old, a business needs a wide, deep moat around its castle to keep the invading hordes, the competitors, at bay. A moat isn't a slogan or a clever advertisement. It is a structural, durable, and often difficult to see advantage embedded in the very fabric of how a business operates. It's what allows a company to earn extraordinary returns on capital for a very, very long time. So, What do these moats look like in the real world? Let me describe a few of the most powerful and enduring types. First, there's the power of a brand, not just a familiar name, but a name that commands a kind of trust or desire so strong that people will pay meaningfully more for an identical product. It's the difference between a bottle of brown sugar water and a bottle that carries a certain name and a feeling. That pricing power, that permission slip to charge more, is a direct result of a moat built in the minds of customers over generations. It's an incredibly valuable asset, though it must be tended to constantly. Then there are switching costs. This is a brilliant sort of moat. It's when it is so difficult, expensive, or disruptive for a customer to change to a competitor's product that they simply don't, even if a cheaper alternative appears. Think of the intricate software systems that run a large corporation, woven into every department. The cost isn't just the new software license, it's the retraining, the data migration, the risk of everything going wrong. That friction is a moat made of glue, and it can be immensely profitable. Another profound moat is the network effect. This is where the product or service becomes more valuable to each user as more people use it. The classic example is a marketplace. A buyer goes where all the sellers are, and a seller goes where all the buyers are. It creates a virtuous, self-reinforcing cycle that becomes almost impossible for a newcomer to replicate. You can't start a small, competing town square. You need the whole town to show up at once, which they won't. Finally, there's the moat of cost advantage. This is often achieved through scale or a unique, protected process. When you can produce something for far less than anyone else, you set the rules. You can undercut competitors on price to defend your share, or you can enjoy fatter profits. It's a brutally effective moat, often built over decades of operational excellence. When you find a business protected by one or, better yet, several of these wide moats, you have found a fortress. You have identified a company that can withstand attacks, endure economic storms, and continue to compound its value because its profits are shielded. Without a moat, high returns are a fleeting accident. With a wide moat, they have a chance to become a durable destiny. Now, a moat is a wonderful thing. It's the fortress wall that keeps the competition out. But a wall by itself is just a static pile of stones. What we are truly looking for is a living, breathing, growing enterprise. A moat is only as valuable as what it protects. And what should it protect? Not a stagnant pond, but a powerful engine. An engine that takes the profits shielded by the moat and reinvests them to make the entire enterprise more valuable. This is the beautiful, almost magical part of the process. We're looking for the business that operates like a massive, heavy flywheel. You've probably seen one, a great, weighted wheel that's terribly hard to get moving. You push, and at first it seems like nothing is happening. But you persist. You put energy into it, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, it begins to turn. With each push, it gains a little more momentum. And then, at a certain point, a wonderful thing happens. The momentum of the wheel itself starts to do the work. Each turn becomes easier, and then faster. The energy you put in is multiplied by the stored energy of the wheel's own motion. It becomes a self-reinforcing machine. A great business is precisely that. The moat, the brand, the network, the cost advantage is the heavy structure of the flywheel. It gives it mass and durability. The high returns on capital that the moat allows are the first hard pushes. This is the capital the business generates that it doesn't need to pay out. Now, Watch what happens next. A truly exceptional management team takes those high returns and puts them right back into the flywheel. They don't waste it on foolish vanity projects or overpriced acquisitions. They reinvest it into widening the moat further, into stronger branding, into deeper research, into better service. They improve the product, making the network even more valuable. They find new efficiencies, deepening the cost advantage. They pay talented people more to keep them. They make the whole system a little better, a little stronger, a little harder for anyone else to ever replicate. And with each turn of this wheel, profits, smart reinvestment, a wider moat, the business's competitive position strengthens. Its earning power grows. This, in turn, generates even more profits to reinvest. The wheel spins faster. The business doesn't just sit behind its wall, it uses the security of the wall to build a taller tower, dig deeper wells, plant more fertile fields inside. The compounding isn't just financial, it's competitive. The business is actively making its own future more secure and more prosperous with each passing year. This flywheel effect is the ultimate compounding machine. It turns time from a mere measurement into the most powerful ingredient of all. A mediocre business's moat erodes with time, but in this special kind of enterprise, time is the fire that forges the metal harder. The longer it runs, the wider the gap becomes between it and any would-be competitor. The initial hard work of building the position transitions into the smooth, powerful, almost effortless looking momentum of a dominant franchise. You aren't just owning a business, you are owning a law of physics in the commercial world, an object in motion that tends to stay in motion, growing ever larger and more powerful. That flywheel we just described, that beautiful, self-reinforcing machine, doesn't run on its own. It needs a steward. It needs a captain at the helm who understands not just how to turn the wheel, but, more importantly, where to point the ship. You can have the most magnificent castle with the widest moat ever dug, but if you put a fool in charge, he'll drain the moat to water his rose garden or sell the stones for quick cash. The quality of management is not a sidebar to our search, it is the very heart of it. This is where we must be particularly discerning. We're not looking for magicians or charismatic salespeople who dominate the front page of the newspaper. We're looking for something rarer and far more valuable, capable, and fanatical stewards. Their mindset is everything. They must think like owners, because they often are, and they must think in decades, not in quarters. Their primary job, their absolute obsession, should be the intelligent allocation of capital. That is, after all, the CEO's most crucial task, deciding what to do with the profits the flywheel generates. A great steward looks at every dollar of excess cash and asks one question: where is this dollar worth the most? Is it worth the most inside the business, reinvested to widen the moat or launch a new product that strengthens the flywheel? Is it worth more use to buy back shares when the company's price is ludicrously low, thereby increasing the ownership stake of every continuing shareholder? Or, if no compelling internal opportunities exist, is it best simply returned to the owners as a dividend, trusting them to deploy it elsewhere? These are the only questions that matter. The manager who spends on plush headquarters, ego-driven mergers, or initiatives meant only to smooth out the next quarter's earnings is not a steward. He is a vandal, slowly dismantling the very fortress he was hired to protect. Beyond capital, a true captain cultivates a culture. He or she builds an organization that attracts and retains the kind of people who are proud to push on that flywheel. This culture isn't about ping-pong tables. It's about integrity, frugality, a focus on the long-term health of the enterprise, and a deep, institutional knowledge that the customer is the source of all prosperity. This culture becomes part of the moat itself. It's very hard to copy. You see, a wonderful business with a poor manager will eventually become a poor business. The moat will silt up. The flywheel will slow. The reverse, however, is almost never true. A poor business with a brilliant manager is still a poor business. You can't fix a fundamentally flawed economic model with charisma. So, our task is to find the rare and beautiful intersection, an extraordinary business with an extraordinary economic franchise, manned by people who are both capable and utterly trustworthy. People who understand that their job is not to report a smooth, upward, sloping earnings line to please Wall Street, but to make judicious, sometimes lumpy, investments that make the business stronger and more valuable 5, 10, 20 years from now. When you find that alignment, a wide moat business in the hands of a true, fanatical owner capitalist, you have found something very close to investment perfection. Thank you. Now, all of this talk about moats and flywheels and stewardship leads us to a critical crossroads, one that exists not in the market, but in our own minds. We can identify the perfect business run by the perfect managers, but if we approach it with the wrong mindset, we will fail, we will lose. The final, essential ingredient for success is not found in an annual report, it is found in the mirror. To hold the stocks that never lose, you must undergo a fundamental transformation. You must stop thinking like a stock trader and start thinking like a business owner. This is the great divide in the investment world. The trader looks at his stock certificate and sees a piece of paper, a ticker symbol, a blinking price on a screen. His entire world is governed by that price. He buys because he thinks the price will go up. He sells because he fears the price will go down. He is a renter of securities, hopping from one to the next, and his relationship to the underlying business is fleeting and purely speculative. He is betting on the mood swings of a deeply emotional fellow named Mr. Market. The owner, and I mean the true, fractional owner, sees something entirely different. When he looks at that certificate, he doesn't see a ticker. He sees a small share of a factory, a brand, a software network, a team of people. He thinks about the company's profit margins, its market position, the strength of its balance sheet, the quality of its research pipeline. The daily, weekly, or even yearly price quotation is irrelevant to him, just as the daily appraisal of your home's value is irrelevant if you have no intention of selling it. He is not renting. He has bought a piece of a going concern with the intent to hold it for a very, very long time. This shift in perspective changes everything. It grants you a tremendous psychological advantage, the luxury of patience. If you own a wonderful business, why would you set a price at which you'd sell it? That would be like deciding to sell your family farm because a noisy fellow offered you a random price that was 30% less than yesterday's random price. It makes no sense. The owner's mindset allows you to welcome market declines because you know the underlying business is fine, and a lower price simply means you can buy more of a good thing at a bargain. The trader, ruled by fear, sees only danger. The market exists to serve you, not to instruct you. It's there to offer you opportunities to buy into great businesses when they're offered at foolish prices, and occasionally, if a price becomes ridiculously high, to sell. but its manic depressive opinions in between are just noise. Your job as an owner is to ignore that noise and focus on the business fundamentals. Are the profits growing? Is the moat widening? Is management allocating capital wisely? If the answers are yes, then your course is clear. Do nothing. Sit tight. Let the powerful machinery of business compounding work for you. Adopting this mindset is the only way you can possibly hope to harness the power of a true compounding machine for the decades required. You cannot ride a flywheel if you are jumping on and off every time it hits a bump. You must get on, strap in, and have the conviction to stay on for the entire magnificent journey. Thank you. Now, if you can bring yourself to think like an owner of a magnificent business, you will be confronted with a final and perhaps the most important truth of this entire endeavor. It is a paradoxical one. We spend so much time, quite rightly, focusing on the risks of investing, but I want to suggest to you that we often fixate on the wrong risk altogether. For the true long-term owner, the greatest danger is not the volatility you see on your brokerage statement. It is not a 30% or even a 50% decline in a stock's price. No, the greatest, most permanent risk you face is far more insidious. It is the risk of being left out. Let me explain. When the price of a wonderful business you own falls sharply, what has actually been lost? Have any of its factories burned down? Has its brand evaporated? Have its customers vanished? Has its competitive moat been filled in? In almost all cases, the answer is no. The underlying enterprise, the engine of value creation, is humming along just as it was before. The loss is purely on paper, a temporary markdown in a manic market. This is not a permanent loss of capital. It is a temporary change in sentiment. If you hold, or better yet, buy more, history shows you are almost certain to be rewarded, as the business's growing value is eventually reflected in its price. The real permanent loss occurs in two other ways, both stemming from a misunderstanding of risk. The first, as we've discussed, is if you panic during one of these temporary markdowns and sell your interest in a terrific business. You have then exchanged a valuable, income-producing asset for cash at the worst possible moment, and you have locked in that loss forever. That is a true, self-inflicted defeat. But the second, and in many ways more profound, permanent loss is one of opportunity. It is the cost of not being invested in these exceptional compounding machines. It is the quiet, relentless erosion of your purchasing power that comes from sitting in cash or mediocre investments because you are paralyzed by the fear of a paper decline, while you are waiting for the perfect, risk-free moment that never comes. The flywheels of the world's great businesses are turning. They are widening their moats, growing their earnings, and compounding their intrinsic value year after year after year. Every day you are not an owner, you fall further behind. Think of it this way. If you had identified one of these rare enterprises 30 years ago, would you rather have owned it through every single market crash, panic, and correction along the way, or would you rather have sat safely on the sidelines in treasury bills? The person who endured the volatility is today wealthy. The person who avoided the volatility is today still safe, but profoundly poorer in real terms. They avoided the temporary dips and sacrificed the permanent ascent. This is the ultimate conclusion of our search. The stock that never loses is not a security that never experiences a price decline. It is the act of committing capital to a supreme business and then having the wisdom and the temperament to stay committed. The risk is not in the occasional storm, it is in missing the entire voyage. Your real job is not to avoid the periodic squalls, but to ensure your ship is so seaworthy, so well captained, that you can sail through them and reach the distant, prosperous shore. Do that, and you will find that the greatest risk was never in the journey, but in never leaving the dock. Thank you.